You stand back up now.
We got to pray.
Our Heavenly Father, we've already been blessed this day with good fellowship and good food, a good place to worship, Heavenly Father. We thank you for this church, what it stood for these many years. Now, Father, as we continue to fellowship and continue to go over old memories of our loved ones, Father, just be with us. Just be with the ones that have prepared this program, Father. We thank you for their diligent work and the time that they've spent, that we might have this possibility to meet together and enjoy these things. And Father, again, go with us. Just lead and guide in our lives. And forgive us where we failed you. In the precious and holy name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Now, as I was said before, this is the first Conley reunion in a number of years, and the first one was held about 40 years ago. At that time, the reunion committee was my grandparents, Rule and Esther Conley, Etoy and Shirley Conley, Aswell, Mr. and Mrs. Aswell Conley, I'm drawing a blank, and Mr. and Mrs. Ray Conley. If y'all were lucky enough to be in here before, you saw the wonderful slideshow that my cousin Stacy had put together. Stacy, many of you are here today because Stacy contacted you by email or phone calls and everything else, and it is truly a shame that she can't be here with us today. As many of you may know, her daughter, who lives in Colorado, has an infection, and I understand that she may be doing better, but Stacy had to leave yesterday to go make sure that was the case and to help take care of Leanne's kids. So she's here with us in spirit, and I have personally loved the slideshow she put together that showed the going all the way back to the first reunion committee. The reason we're here today, though, there was several folks in the family who decided it was time to do another one of these. And they got together, I think, initially off of Facebook and decided it was time to go for it. And I want us right now, before we go any further, to recognize those people and to give them a special thanks because they did all the heavy lifting here, and all we had to do pretty much was show up with some food and visit. So right now I want to thank Regina Conley-Bearden, Wayne Conley, I understand, and Letta Lesh. Are y'all here? If you are, could you take a stand, please, or Letta Lesh? Yeah. I want to give them a round of applause. Later in the program, we're going to talk about if we want to make this again some sort of annual reunion and how we might be able to put some of this information together. But let me tell you, there's a lot of work that went on behind the scenes. The silent auction that we had was that we'll announce the winners of in a little while. The money that comes from that will be used to defray the costs that those folks were willing to put out on our behalf. So we certainly appreciate everything that they have done for us here. Now I'm going to have Scott Carson, who'll come forward to do the welcome for us.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, welcome everyone to the Conley reunion. We didn't plan this, but I was going to run through my begats too to give you my legitimacy, my pedigree. So my name is Scott Carson, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the son of Thomas G. Carson and Joanne Conley, who is the daughter of Shirley Newman and Etoyle Conley, the son of Willie Davis and William Burt Conley, the son of Mary Hall and Thomas Eugene Conley, the son of Dicey Talton and Cullen Thomas Conley. My name might not be Conley, but my grandfather believed that having a single drop of Conley blood in you made you a full-fledged Conley. He used to say to us, "You're a Conley. Don't ever forget that, and hold your head up high." The last time I came to a Conley reunion at Spring Hill, my grandparents and all my great aunts were here. They're gone now. My mother is older now than my grandparents were then. I'm older than my mother was then. And in fact, when I was checking some things in the Conley book, I found out that I am the same age as Cullen Thomas Conley was when he died. We can't wait another 25, 30 years before we do this again. When Stacy put me on the program to do the welcome, I decided, well, you know, I better look up the word welcome in the dictionary, and I found this definition: to greet the arrival of a person with pleasure. Looking further under the synonyms, I found the word howdy. Well, it made me think of Aunt Doris and going to visit her. I can see her sitting in the back of her house in her bedroom under one of those reading lights that Roy Webb said were so hot you could bake cakes under them. And when you opened her front door, she'd lean forward and look down the hall to see who it was. And when she recognized you, she'd yell, "Hey, come on in!" Well, that's sort of who we are as Conleys. When people are around Conleys for the first time, they're struck with how much we like to talk. I guess that comes from being Irish and from having stories worth telling and retelling over and over again. One time a coworker asked my dad what he had watched on TV the night before. Daddy just laughed and said, "We didn't even turn on TV. Joanne was telling stories about her family, and that was the only show in town." Several years ago, I ran across a quote that could have been spoken about our family. Some people think we're made of flesh and blood and bone. Scientists say we're made of atoms. But I think we're made of stories. When we die, that's what people remember. The stories of our lives and the stories we told. Our family stories teach us and shape us. They tell us who we are. Many of us can remember sitting on someone's lap or lying on the floor in the middle of a room listening to older Conleys talk about Conleys that we'd never even seen or heard about. These weren't once upon a time fairy tales. They were recollections of real events and flesh and bone people. Without the retelling of stories, we couldn't be here today because we wouldn't know who was the Irish stowaway. We would never have heard of Cullen Thomas Conley and how he came to this continent and established a huge clan that spans generations now. The plot of the book and the movie Fried Green Tomatoes is driven by a character who tells family stories to a friend of hers. And toward the end, she says to her friend, "All these people will live as long as you remember them." That's a good reminder for all of us. Tell those Conley stories again and again so that the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the ones that we loved and lost, they'll live on. Tell the stories to your children and your grandchildren so that they'll gain a solid sense of who they are. And above all else, tell the stories about Conleys to make people laugh, because they always make people laugh. Do any of y'all remember the year that Van Gardner gave the welcome at the Conley reunion? And he started by saying, "Well, welcome everybody. I had what I wanted to say written down on a piece of paper, but now I can't find it. I asked my wife if she'd seen my speech, and she said, well, the way you were putting away food outside, you probably ate it, and you didn't even notice." They tell me a story about when my father was first introduced to the Conleys. It was at a gathering at Christmas time, and he realized right away that he was shorter than almost all the men in the room. And then he came face to face with a very formidable woman who looked down at him, and with an enthusiastic hug, she said, "I'm Aunt Doris. In this family, the women are big too. Welcome to the Conley family." So welcome again, everybody. Have some fun.
Next on the program, we're going to have a couple of people come up and talk about the authors of the book. Now, I see enough of you out there that are at least my age or older, and you guys know what the book is. But I am also pleased that there's some younger folks out here who may not know exactly what goes on or how this came about. My Uncle Etoy, Scott's grandfather, and Garney McGinney decided in the 70s that they were going to put together a book talking about the Conleys. Uncle Etoy went and did some research. He made a couple of trips to Ireland and a trip to Australia to find our relatives and where we came from. Garney McGinney was the one who decided to actually write this book. And one of the things that some of y'all may not be able to comprehend, that this was done in the days before computers, and the days before word processors, and before email, and the fact that you could get things online. This was done by people actually going out and talking to folks and handwriting it out or typing it. One of the things I remember so very vividly about this book is that Uncle Etoy would come to our house on many Saturday and Sunday afternoons telling us the stories that Scott's talking about. And at some point he asked me if I would be willing to help with the book. And I, at that point, had taken typing in high school, and that was the only qualification I had to have other than I knew how to spell Conley without an E. And he would bring me pages after pages that Dr. McGinney had handwritten on the back of tests. And it was all the story, everybody starting, I know everybody's story from way back. Now, I wasn't a very good typist, and I feel pretty certain that most of what I typed originally had to be retyped by somebody else. But it meant a lot to me that Uncle Etoy wanted me to be involved in the process, and in a way for me to have a special connection to the book. So today, we have two people who are going to come and speak to us and tell us a little bit about the guys who decided to go to this trouble to actually have this written down, because you guys know how unusual it is to have something in hardback, especially something printed in 1976. So I'm going to ask Philip Cook if he could come forward and let him tell about Garney McGinney.
They have a full house. First of all, I want to say that talking behind a pulpit always makes me nervous, like maybe I shouldn't be here. Although I've been an elder in my church for 30 years, I still don't feel relaxed talking behind a pulpit. But I am really pleased to be here today to talk about Dr. McGinney for several reasons. But first of all, I want to pay tribute to the Conley clan for having such a tradition like this, for being so close and at the same time so numerous. When I was growing up in Ringgold, we had 4 branches of the Cook family. We had very little to do with each other. We never had one single family reunion, and now most of us have died out. I think Chip's about the only one left from my branch. So I think it's wonderful, and I hope that this never comes to an end, because it's really an important part of your heritage, and I'm pleased to even be indirectly associated with it. Now, what am I doing up here talking about Dr. Garney McGinney? His name's not even Conley, is it? Well, I doubt if there's anybody in the world that owes more to a single person than I do to Dr. McGinney. Because of him, primarily, I was able to enjoy a 45-year career as a college historian. And he was the person that set me out on that journey. And he did more than anybody else to help me get through it and get along with it. Now, this is about him, so I don't want to take a lot of time talking about myself. But in 1963, Louisiana Tech got a master's degree program in history. I was at home milking cows in the family dairy. My mother sent me over to Ruston to see Dr. McGinney because she always wanted me to be a school teacher. Dr. McGinney and I hit it off right away, probably because I was from Ringgold. And if he liked you, he'd do anything in the world for you. If he didn't, well, he didn't have any time for you. But in any case, he took me under his wing. He encouraged me, and he was very pleased with the quality of work that I did. He directed my thesis, which was the history of Antebellum Bienville Parish. And after a year, when I finished, there was an unexpected opening in the history department, and he gave me my first teaching job, temporary 1-year appointment. And with the promise that I wouldn't try to hang on, that as soon as that year was over, I'd go on and go to graduate school and work on a PhD, because he was convinced that I could succeed. And so that's what happened. He happened to be good friends of the head of the history department, University of Georgia, the oldest state university in the nation, by the way. It goes back to 1787. Dr. Joe Parks and Dr. McGinney were good buddies because they were both interested in Civil War history. Dr. McGinney was able to get me a graduate assistantship so that I could work on my PhD and teach at the same time at the University of Georgia. And I had a wonderful 3 years there as an experience. And all of that goes back to Dr. McGinney. And when I finished, I came back to Louisiana, taught for a couple of years at Northeast, and then came on back to Tech and taught for 40 years there and retired a couple years ago. But in any case, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be a historian had it not been for Dr. McGinney, who helped me, who mentored me, gave me advice, opened the path for me. And so there's nobody, as I said, I owe as much to is Dr. McGinney. This past March, the Louisiana Historical Association, its annual meeting in Lafayette, had a program dedicated to the 50th anniversary of the Louisiana Historical Association. And they wanted speakers to talk about the founders of it, and Dr. McGinney was one of the 5 founders of the Louisiana Historical Association. And so they asked me if I would give a talk, or in historians' lingo, a paper on Dr. McGinney, which I was very pleased to do. I will not read the whole thing here, although I have heard that Dr. McGinney had a tradition of talking for about an hour and a half when he came to these reunions. And I'd be glad to do that if you want to hear it. But I plan to publish this paper, by the way, in the Louisiana History Journal or the North Louisiana History Journal, but I entitled it From Cotton Fields to Halls of Ivy. And that pretty much describes his life. And I began by saying, who was Garney McGinney and why is he the subject of a paper at the Louisiana Historical Association? As for why, he was one of the founding fathers of the Louisiana Historical Association and one of Louisiana's most distinguished historians. Now, what about who? Garney McGinney was born on April 5th, 1900, in a log house on a 40-acre farm that his father had bought that same year. The farm was about 5 miles from Ringgold in the southwestern part of Bienville Parish. Unlike most of the farm families in North Louisiana who were of English or Scots-Irish descent, the Garney's family were most all Irish, and he took great pride in that. This included a great-grandfather who came to America as a 16-year-old stowaway who actually swam ashore at Savannah, Georgia in 1836, married and came to Bienville Parish in 1844. The McGinney family had always been yeoman farmers. They did their own work. Dr. McGinney was proud of the fact they had never been slave owners, that they always did their own work. And most of the 40 acres were planted in cotton, although it produced many other things that the family used to live on. Vegetables, animals produced milk, meat, and so forth. And all of the children, of course, participated in the production of all of that. He was one of 9 children, and they all were expected to do their share on the farm. From the age of 6 until 15, Garney attended a 2-room community school taught by a man who never attended college. It was known as the Lee School, because this was the Lee community, I guess. Now, unlike many of his schoolmates, he was eager to learn how to read, write, do arithmetic, or at least that's what he told me. And at an early age, he decided he did not want to remain on the farm. He wanted to be a teacher. He was going to leave the farm as soon as he could. He especially disliked working in the cotton fields. Well, this dislike for farm work was a strong incentive for him to excel in school. And if there's any one thing that ever characterized him in his whole life, he was always a high achiever no matter what he did. By age 14, Garney decided that he wanted to be a teacher. And this would require more education, at least a high school diploma. Nobody in the entire community, he told me, had ever gone to high school before. And Ringgold High School was the closest school, and it was 5 miles away. But, and again, this is what Dr. McGinney told me, Garney's plan to continue his education was met with hostility by everyone in the family except his mother. His brothers and sisters resented the fact that he wouldn't be there with them to do his full share of the work on the farm. But his mother was determined to help him get more education and help launch him on a career as a teacher. And he never forgot that. Now, there's a lot of other things that he told me about his struggle to get a high school education, but to begin with, he had to walk to school each day, 5 miles to school, 5 miles back. And a lady that lived on the western edge of Ringo told me one time that she well remembered seeing him walk by her house early in the morning in the rain, the sleet, and the snow on the way to school. But he got lucky. After a few months, he found a family in Ringo that would take him in for room and board if he chopped all their firewood, started the fires each morning, milked the cows, and fed the horses all before school. And he was glad to get that deal. And so he was able to stay there in town and complete a year in school that way. I just wonder what it would be like today if today's high school students had to do that before school each day. Of course, it would have been tough for my generation too. But he told me that that was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for him, and he was extremely grateful to the family that was willing to let him live with them. Now, when Dr. McGinney was 15 years old, after 1 year of high school, he took the state teacher's exam. 15 years old. And he made such a high grade on it, he qualified to be a principal. So he went ahead and finished that first year of high school and was awarded a high school diploma. Can you imagine that in 1 year? I was sort of like Huey Long going to 1 year law school down at Tulane and getting a degree. But in any case, he took a job as soon as he got his diploma teaching and as principal, 16 years old now, at a oil field boom town down in Red River Parish. It must have been around East Point somewhere. It doesn't even exist anymore, but at the time he said there were about 3,000 people there. And this was in the 1920s. He said it was the most dangerous environment he'd ever been in his life. He said every night you could hear guns going off, people screaming, and at least one person a night got shot and killed because when the oil field workers went on the rigs, they were gambling and drinking. And he had to teach their children. And there were 2 teachers in the whole school. He was the principal. And like so many other schools back in those days, you had to prove yourself to the students before they would respect you. And it wasn't long before he got in a fight with one of the students, one of the toughest boys in the school, and he held his own. The boy backed off, and from then on he said he didn't have any real trouble with him. Incidentally, I heard that same story about Ringo High School back in the 1930s. Mr. Shelby, if any of you remember him, he had to fight several of the boys in Ringo High School before they would behave themselves, according to my parents. Well, in any case, he started out then as a principal at the age of 16. Well, after that year's contract was over, he got out of there as fast as he could and got a job as principal at a much more peaceful place, Crossroads School in Claiborne Parish. He enjoyed that, but then he left for another small rural school in DeSoto Parish, which he enjoyed very much. Well, he was saving his money up, and by doing that, he was able to begin school at Northwestern State College, and now University. And he would go to Northwestern in the summer and teach during the year. One of his most unusual assignments was when he was teaching down in Point Coupé Parish on the edge of the Chaffalaya Swamp. He said in the rainy season, the only way you could get to school was in a boat. So he used to paddle to school every morning. Well, that lasted about a year or two. In any case, he came back and finished up his degree. He got a degree in math and science, of all things, at Northwestern. And then continued to teach and save his money up because by that time he wanted to advance on to a higher level. And he went to Peabody Teachers College in Nashville, Tennessee, which is one of the top teachers' colleges in the country. And he was right next door to Vanderbilt University. And while he was there working on a degree in economics, he was able to take some history courses at Vanderbilt, who had some of the finest historians in the nation. Well, he finished his master's degree in economics and returned to Northwestern, where he expected to teach economics. But they didn't need him to teach economics. Instead, they made him teach education courses, which told me he didn't like at all. And so he only stayed at Northwestern for a couple of years. Then he got a job at Louisiana Tech where he could teach history. And so he began teaching there. And that's where he spent most of the rest of his career. For 35 years, he was head of the social science and history department there. And in between there was about a 2-year period in which he was acting president of Northwestern State College. Well, in any case, he remained at Tech for the rest of his career. And he became one of the most highly respected historians in the state. And when I was taking Louisiana history at LSU in 1955, our textbook was Dr. McGinney's History of Louisiana, which made me very proud. And I let the history department head know about that. But he and Dr. McGinney didn't get along very well. They were rivals and competitors, and he grumbled about having to use a textbook written by somebody from Louisiana Tech. But in any case, that was it. He wrote the college textbook in Louisiana history. And that leads me to some other things I want to tell you about on his achievements, because that's what we're honoring today. He wrote 6 books. The first of his was based on his PhD dissertation, University of Texas, entitled Louisiana Redeemed. It was a study of the end of Reconstruction in Louisiana. Then he wrote his History of Louisiana. Then he wrote a little book called 97 Young Men that told about his experience in the Student Officers Training Corps during World War I. It was sort of like ROTC, and they were located at Louisiana College, and they would take college classes in the morning and military training in the afternoon. However, he never did serve on active duty because the war ended before the program was over. Then he wrote the one that all of you all are so familiar with, An Irish Stowaway, which is the story of Cullen Thomas Conley and contains tremendous amounts of genealogical information about the Conley family. After that, he wrote a book in which he paid tribute to his high school principal, who he absolutely adored, Dr. Mary Mills. She was his principal. She encouraged him to go on to college, and she later on would have a distinguished career herself as one of the pioneers in the field of rural sociology in the Louisiana Extension Service. Well, he wrote this book on Dr. Mims and her career. I meant to bring all these books with me and hold them up and show you, and I went off and forgot them. Finally, the last book he wrote was entitled Twig of the McGinney Family Tree, about his McGinney family. He wrote 45 articles in historical journals and magazines and newspapers and all of that sort of thing. And some of those articles were about his own family and about where he came from. For instance, he wrote an article on User Lesh, the founder of the Lesh family in this region, entitled A Frenchman Comes to the Hills of North Louisiana. He wrote another article entitled Mary Jane Conley Lesh, Pioneer Woman of Bienville Parish. And then he wrote another article on the human side of war, Letters of Isaac Hall to his wife during the Civil War. These were just a few of the many articles that he wrote in the North Louisiana History Journal and in the Louisiana History Journal. And one could go on and on. When I was interviewing, I asked him if he would list all the different articles that he had written, mainly on history of North Louisiana, and they total 45, which I will not even begin to try to go through. In fact, I'm sure I'm going on too long anyway. I wanted to just briefly describe where he fits into all of the Conley family, and I had it on a card here. It must have fell down. Yeah, thank you. Now, this is probably a repetition of a lot of you have already heard, but in any case, I want to make sure you know where he fits into all of the Conley picture. He was the son of Lonnie and Maud Lesh. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. The son of Lonnie and Maud McGinney. His mother, Maud Lesh, was a daughter of User and Mary Jane Conley Lesh. So his grandmother was a Conley on his mother's side. And his great-grandfather was Cullen Thomas Conley, who was the patriarch of the Conley family, who came here in 1844. Now, one final thing before I wrap all of this up, because I'm sure I've talked too long already. I asked Dr. McGinney if he'd make a list of the things he considered to be his greatest achievements. And incidentally, all this came from interviews I had with him because I'm going to write his biography one of these days. And you'll never guess in 1,000 years what his first thing he mentioned, he listed down here, is his first great achievement. He said, "The first time I shot a gun, I killed a squirrel." I just wonder if anybody else has that distinction. I know I certainly don't. He says at 15, he was the youngest boy in the state to receive a certificate to teach. And at 16, he received a principalship certificate. He was the youngest principal in the state of Louisiana at age 16. He was the first graduate of Louisiana High School to become a teacher. And incidentally, he said that the first day he walked into Ringgold High School, he was so intimidated because he'd never been in a high school before. And he was afraid to death that he would not be able to measure up to those kids from the town who were there. Well, he quickly passed them all up and became probably the sharpest student in the whole school. So that's a tribute to the education, I guess, that he got in Lee School. He was certainly the first graduate of Ringgold High School to receive a PhD degree. He was the first graduate of Northwestern State College to later on serve as its president. And at retirement at age 65, he had taught longer than anybody born in the 20th century in Louisiana. Now, I don't know how he figured that out, but that's what he said. He was the organizer of the Lincoln Parish Historical Association, its first president. He was one of the organizers of the North Louisiana Historical Association and the Louisiana Historical Association. And here's another one you'd never think about. He claims that he introduced centipede grass to the state of Louisiana, that he was the first person to bring centipede grass into Louisiana. Incidentally, he had a beautiful home. How many of you have ever seen his home on the north edge of Ruston on 167? A big white column home that he built, and he built it back in the 40s when hardly anybody was living on the north side of Ruston. Well, as luck would have it, but I don't think it was luck because he was a shrewd businessman, Ruston began to move northward, and within a few years, he was selling lots to all the richest people in Ruston because he had bought that land around his house. And that's today even. Some of the mansions of Ruston are built on lots that Dr. McGinney sold them. Dr. McGinney enjoyed using his knowledge in economics. He loved to invest in the stock market. And he bought real estate and sold real estate. And that's the way he used that economics degree that he never got to use to teach with. He was the first professor emeritus at Louisiana Tech after he retired. And there are several different things that honor him today. If I can, again, pick my notes up, I want to tell you about them. In 1977, he was honored by Louisiana Tech with the establishment of the McGinney Chair of History. A chair in academic terms is the highest honor you can have as a professor. And this Chair of History was established in his honor and carries his name today. And I'm pleased to say that for the past few years before I retired, I held the McGinney Chair of History, and I'm sure he would have been very pleased. Also, the Louisiana Historical Association has honored him in a special way. It presents annually the Garney McGinney Lifetime Meritorious Service Award, which honors somebody who has spent a career in the Louisiana Historical Association and has, through their work and so forth, been recognized. And I received that award about 3 or 4 years ago. And again, I'm not bragging, but I'm sure he would have been pleased with that. Well, in any case, Dr. McGinney's name lives on in a lot of different ways. And I propose, or I believe, that with these achievements, that he is certainly one of the most distinguished members of the Conley clan, a person that all of you can be proud of. I wish my family had produced somebody like that, but we haven't. So he's somebody that I think should always be remembered in the Conley clan. Now, there's one thing about him. He had very strong likes and dislikes. And as you know, he was pretty outspoken. Would that be a Conley trait or a McGinney trait? But in any case, he was an unforgettable person. And I'm again honored that I could be here and tell you a little bit about his career. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Kathy Spanauer Edwards come and talk to us about Etoy Conley, the other author of the book.
Good afternoon, Conley cousins and cousins-in-law. I am Kathy Spanauer Edwards, sixth generation descendant of Cullen Thomas and Dicey Conley. I'm not going to go into my pedigree because our family tree doesn't fork. My grandparents were both great-grandchildren of Thomas Cullen Conley and Dicey. When Stacy first asked me to speak on my great-uncle Etoy Conley, I said, get his son, Stan. He's the one to do it. And she said, no, Stan had volunteered you to do it. So here I am. As you will soon see, I am not a public speaker. I worried about giving Uncle Etoy's extraordinary life justice here today. And then I remembered my grandmother, Doris, who Scott talked about already. She gave advice. When speaking in public, just pretend your audience is naked. So here we go. Uncle Etoy, pardon? Uncle Etoy was born June 12, 1909 on his parents' farm not far from where we are today. He was their third child, joining his brother Reuel and his sister Theo. Sisters Doris and Billy arrived a few years later. I asked my great-grandmother where they came up with their children's unusual names, and she said she got them from characters in books that she read. Uncle Etoy's life was very similar to the other young people here in the Spring Hill community at that time. He attended Lee Community School, but he had one thing, his mother was one of the teachers there, so I'm sure that kind of cut into some of his fun. When he was 9, his family moved to Ringo, as Dr. Cook talked about the children having to go to Ringo to finish high school. And that was very important to Uncle Etoy's parents. He attended Normal, which is now Northwestern, when he graduated for just one semester. Uncle Etoy's work history is a topic all to itself. He worked many and any job he could find. He often put in crops and then traveled to other places to do other jobs. He would then hire his 2 sisters to reap the crops. In 1930, Uncle Etoy married his soulmate, Shirley Newman. They had 2 children, Joanne Conley Carson and Stanley Etoy Conley. Together, they moved over 75 times in 11 years as he worked as a surveyor. In 1949, he formed his own company, Delta Exploration Corporation. When he was 43 years old, he semi-retired and moved back to Ringo. This is the man most of us remember when thinking of Etoy Conley. Neatly dressed with a tie and his hat, going to the post office and City Hall. Under that hat was a brilliant mind. He loved to debate and could take either side and win. When Mom Willie and the girls cooked Sunday dinner, he would begin a discussion about the Sunday sermon. He'd put a twist on it that would be sure to get my Aunt Esther Conley and my grandmother Doris upset and excited. He could stay cool, and they would sputter and get louder, and he would get the best of them. It was a game with him. Uncle Etoy was a member of the First Baptist Church of Ringgold. He was a 33rd degree Mason and a Shriner. He had many interests, but his greatest love was for his family. When his father became homebound, Uncle Etoy would come over daily. Cousin Scott and I often watched as he gently shaved Daddy Bert. He was proud of his Conley family and loved gathering the information through his many trips to Ireland, England, and Australia. My grandmother said, Etoy thinks the Conleys are his only relatives. When his son Stan married Susan, a Wimberley descendant, Mama said, Etoy's now recognizing the other side, the Wimberleys. Cousin Marion Lesh told me that on one of Uncle Etoy's trips to Ireland, he found a Conley cousin working on a dilapidated tractor. Uncle Etoy tried to buy the cousin a new tractor, but the cousin refused. Marion also said that Uncle Etoy did not want his daughter, Joanne, to ride in the car with Marion. Uncle Etoy gave the best advice. Uncle Etoy and Dr. Garney McGinney worked together to give us our priceless Irish stowaway. I heard Uncle Etoy disagree with only one of Dr. McGinney's ideas. That was to use a 25-year-old picture of himself in the Irish stowaway. Uncle Etoy used a recent photograph of himself. And today I thought it time to change that. So here is a picture of Uncle Etoy when he was perhaps 3.5 years old. So I want to share this with everybody today. Wherever we can put it, Lisa. Thank you for your time and for giving me this opportunity to talk about someone who was so important to me and good to me. And there's no way I could stay up here, Dr. Cook, just like you with Dr. McGinney, and talk all day about how much he meant to me and my mother and the rest of my family. But thanks for letting me be with you today.
Now, we've talked now quite a bit about this book, and I wanted to let you know that there is a plan for a reprinting of this book. And if you're interested, there's some of these sheets in the foyer out here, or I have some up here. And if nothing else, if you'll come by and give us your email address or your real address, we'll make sure you get one of them if there's not enough going around to go give out right now. There also seems to be an interest in maybe updating the book. In fact, those of you who mentioned to me that you're interested in doing that, it was suggested to me that perhaps y'all could be the committee to take on the project. But fortunately for you, I think Lita has decided that she's willing to maybe take the lead on that. So if you're interested in that, in updating the book, we also need you to update your information. A couple of people indicated that in looking through the Irish Stowaway, they found some mistakes. Well, I'm not surprised given how things happened, but a lot of that information was gathered from one person, simply may have been a mistake. One of the ways we may be able to make this gathering of the information a little bit easier, that there's a website out there called geni.com. I believe that's GENI.com. And if you go on that site, you'll find that many of the family has already started putting their information on there. So if you're computer literate, that would be a great way to update your information or to make any changes. Or if you'd like, you can come get our email addresses and email that to us, and we can collect all of it together. But like I said, if you have any questions, if you want to let it be known that you're interested in getting copies of the original Irish Stowaway book or interested in updating it, come up here after this is over with and we'll get their information, and I'll give you the email addresses or whatever you might need so we can make this become a reality. Now, another part of the program that we always had is that we had all of the descendants, the various family, Cullen Thomas Conley and Dicey had 10 kids. And at each of the programs, we would have each of the descendants of each of the 10 children stand so that we could get an idea of who was here. So we thought we'd try that again today. I know some of you are not maybe 100% sure how you go back up the chain, but maybe if you look around at the rest of the folks who you belong to, maybe we can figure it out from there. So if you are the children or in that branch of the Cullen Thomas Conley family, and some of you are going to get to stand up twice, please stand. His oldest child was Cullen Jefferson Conley. Do we have anybody here that represents that chain, that part of the chain? Well, maybe, there we go. There we go. All right, the second child was Margaret Lucy Conley Allams. All right, we got two there. We're getting numbered. We started one, now we got two. The next branch is the Mary Jane Conley Lesh group. There we go. How about the Laura Ann Conley Nettles group? I'm going to have to make sure they get on the list next time and let them know they weren't here. How about the Martin William Conley? There we go. Uh-oh, I think they're ahead so far. All right, how about my personal favorite, the Thomas Eugene Conley group? Yeah. Next on the list would be the John Franklin Conley branch. There we go. All right, how about the James Philip Conley group? Well, how about that? All right. Number 9 was William Henry Conley. Do we have descendants of his branch? William Henry Conley. And then last but certainly not least is the Martha Mahalia Conley Coward McGinney group. There we go. Well, we're glad everybody came. Now we also would like to find out who to give special recognition to the great-grandchildren of Cullen Thomas and Dicey Conley. Now, I don't know, we weren't sure who was going to be here, but do we have any great-grandchildren of Cullen Thomas or Dicey Conley? I think Stacy told me that she thought that Mary Kirkley Fuller might be here today. She's in the hospital. Okay. Well, as you can see, the group is getting a little bit older and older, and but we're glad we knew she was planning on coming. However, now we'd like to figure out maybe who is the oldest Conley descendant here. Now, let's see if we got anybody who's over the age of 90. I think we do. Mr. Ruffin. How old are you, Mr. Ruffin? 95. Up, we got another one. How old? 91. Well, I'm glad we have a chance to recognize you. And Mr. Ruffin, I believe Lita has a little gift for you. Didn't know you were going to get a prize coming here. All right, now also, we always used to figure out who came the furthest. Came the farthest, whatever the proper grammar that is. Who was... Yeah, who came from way off? Joanne used to win coming from Singapore, but she's just qualified this time. She lives in Ringgold now. All right, how about folks outside? I know we have a group from Texas. I know we've got plenty from Louisiana. We've got a group from Texas. Have we got anybody from not Louisiana or Texas? Up? Where are you? Scott? Mississippi? Virginia? Washington State? Yes, ma'am. New Mexico? Well, I think, listening to that, Washington State looks like it's the winner here. And you're Laura Anderson, right?
Yes, but I think it would be my granddaughter Kelsey because she lives just
You're a little bit further, yeah. You're a little bit further north?
a few hours from Olympus.
All right. We have our winners. Are you going to stand up and so everybody can see you and we can get you a present? Well, we appreciate Lita remembering that this was part of the program that we needed to add it here. Now, speaking of the program and the traditions of the program, this is a part where we talk about our trips to Ireland and news from Ireland. And when I asked Stacy who was going to speak at this, she said, I guess you are. Because I guess as far as she knew, I was the most recent visitor to Ireland. And there may be others of you who have been to Ireland, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk too. I just, in an effort to have something to say, and knowing that pictures are worth 1,000 words, I decided to put in a few of the photos. A cousin on the other side had was taking his last year of college at Trinity University in Dublin. So we used that as an excuse last year to go over to Ireland. My husband, who happens to be sitting over here, his last name is Cronin, so my poor boys have a double, triple dose of Irish all over the place. But after we initially got there, we did sort of what we do is sort of warp speed Conley travel. If we go on a vacation and don't come back worn out, we don't feel like we've had a vacation. But we decided we were going to go look for some Conleys without E's in them or without all those other letters. And Bill and a few others had been over there, and through the magic of GPSs and the internet, we actually found 2 towns in Ireland that have Conley spelled the right way. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is the first little Kilconley town we found. Now, Kil, K-I-L, means church in Ireland. So in 2 different places, we found the Church of Conley spelled the right way, as I put it. And Heather, if you could hit this, we simply put Kilconley into the GPS, and we came upon this little place in Kerry County, right off the Shannon River. And we found this pretty little graveyard. And as we came to this spot, my husband goes, "Are you sure you know where we're going?" Because we were on a little bitty path like most of the Irish roads were, as you can see off there. And the only thing there, which at the spot on the map that said Kilconley, was this little graveyard. So we got out to see if we could find any Conley gravestones. And it was a beautiful little area. What you can't see is it overlooked the bay right at the mouth of the Shannon River. It really was just an incredible little place to happen upon. However, we looked all through all of this and found not a single gravestone with Conley on it. But as you can see, an awful lot of them, or maybe you can't see, or a lot of them were in disrepair. So maybe we had ancestors there, maybe we didn't. But it was a really kind of a neat place to go. But not to be discouraged, we found the other Kilconley. There's one not too far from there. And we found, anytime, if y'all have had Conley in your name at all, like I did, that's my maiden name, anytime you can find it without spelled anywhere close to being correct, you're just thrilled. So we were taking pictures of everything. And this was the sign. Of course, they have garbage cans in Ireland just like ours. But we found the little town of Kilconley, and we wandered around and tried to find something. There was a Catholic church and a Protestant church. We found the Gaelic Athletic Association Club, where they have what they call soccer over there, or their version of it. Even they have their own little, that C-H-O-N-L-A is Conley spelled our way in Gaelic. This is the Protestant church that I think Bill may have said he saw, but he wasn't brave enough to crawl over the fences. That didn't stop me and my husband and my sons. We actually found a picture of it and had to wonder, that was from the 1930s, the same church. And we wandered around. Most of the graveyards also was in disrepair, so I don't know, we may have had Conley descendants hiding there, but we had a good time knocking around. We made our way around to the Northern Ireland and to the town of Glenarm. And if you have read the Conley book, that's where Cullen Thomas Conley is supposed to have left. That's where the ship was that he stowed away. So we took copies of those pages of the book and made our way to this little town. It was a beautiful little place, and if you read the book, that should be Mount Conley. Now, when we ask the people who live there, they don't call it that anymore, but I'm sure they're just mistaken and don't know any better. But we wandered through the streets knowing that probably our relatives had been there, because those buildings had been there a long time ago, and made our way around, bought ourselves lunch at one of the little shops, and eventually made our way to the St. Patrick's Church Now, this is the church where Uncle Etoy did a lot of the research where he found our relatives back in Ireland. It was undergoing renovations the day we were there. We couldn't go through. But we made our way through the graveyard, and lo and behold, we did find some people with Conley spelled correctly. There's a lot of Williams we found, Elizabeths, and Davids and Johns. Most of them, all the gravestones indicated that they lived to be a grand old age. And it was really a neat experience for me, as well as my children, to be able to see where our relatives really had started. We wound up having our lunch here right there on the bay where Cullen Thomas was supposed to have stowed away. We couldn't help but wonder what it must have been like to jump on a ship and take off into that wild blue yonder, and that's what he did. It was quite a unique experience. We, unlike some of my more social cousins, did not go and meet any of the Conley families there, but my cousin Jill asked that I include this in the slideshow because she, in 2006, made a trip over there, and these are your relatives from over there. This is Frida Anderson and her family, and they are descendants of Cullen Thomas Conley, just like we are. Jill had a nice dinner with them and visit, and we did not take the time to do that, but she tells me they were a friendly bunch and treated her well. But that is my news from Ireland. I don't know, has anybody else got a trip to want to talk about? Well, maybe next year we'll have somebody else. Maybe this will stir somebody else to go make a trip over there.
Ma'am,
Mm-hmm.
we went in 2004 and had high tea with the Conleys.
Oh, did you?
We also went to St. Patrick's and walked around the graveyard there. We went to Glenarm.
Yep.
We stayed in the little town there.
Oh, neat.
It was wonderful. We spent 10 days.
Oh, how neat. That's great. Anybody else? Maybe well, maybe, like I said, maybe the next time we have one of these, we'll have some more. Yes, ma'am.
In 1994, my daughter and I went to Ireland, and we looked up Frida Anderson and her family, and they called in all the relatives and had a big meal for us, and introduced us to everybody. He drove us around the little town and showing us everything. And at the time, their baby was about 2 years old, Margaret. So I don't know how old she is now. I couldn't figure out which one she might be now.
Well, you can come and take a look. I've got a copy of the picture here if you want to look a little more carefully. Well, it's really neat that we can actually find relatives over there. That's not very often that folks can do that. It's like Dr. Cook was saying, we really are very lucky. Well, now we're going to switch and show not only we've shown how smart we are and what good authors of books we are, but now we're going to show how musically talented we are. And we're going to have several folks come up here. I get to have great pride because a couple of my particular favorite uncles are on the program. And I don't know what he's going to play because he didn't tell me.
Well, just to let you know, I'm not a Conley. I'm married one, and Philip and I grew up across the street from each other, so I guess we're guilty by association. And with my wife, we have our plot picked out across the street into the cemetery, and when my wife wants me to do something I'm really not inclined to do, she said, I'll probably outlive you, and I'm going to bury you next to your mother-in-law.
next, we're going to have Rick Carlisle is going to come and
I want to thank Stacy and the other folks who put me on the program today. Thank you very much. My great grandmother, that's on my father's side, was Leona Conley, perhaps better known as Mammy Tully. And the Carlisles and the Conleys joined up more than once. You know, back in there, there was not only our little branch, but there were others. I thought I'd just play a couple songs here that maybe express some of that sentiment. There's a storm across the valley, clouds are rolling in. There's an afternoon is heavy on your shoulder. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, miles or more away. Whining of the wheels just makes it colder. He's an hour or more from riding, all your prayers up in the sky. And 10 days on the road, barely gone. There's a fire softly burning, supper's on the stove. The light in your eyes makes them warm. And hey, it's good to be back home again. Sometimes this old farm seems like a long-lost friend. And hey, it's good to be back home again. There's all the news to tell him, how you'd spend your time, and what the latest thing the neighbors say. And your mother called last Friday, sunshine made her cry, and you felt the baby move just yesterday. And oh, the time that I can lay this tired old body down and feel your fingers, feathers soft upon me. The kisses that I live for and the love that lights my way and the happiness that living with you brings me. It's the sweetest thing I know of, spending time with you. It's the little things that make a house a home. Like a fire softly burning and supper on the stove, and the light in your eyes that makes me warm. Well, hey, it's good to be back home again. Sometimes this old farm feels like a long-lost friend, and hey, it's good to be back home again. Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life have gone, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars has flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
You stay there, Rick, we'll put you to work with us.
All right. Come on, I want to play. This is an Indian style flute, but it just happens that it's made the same way that Irish flutes are made. I mean, it has the same fingering and so forth, so I thought I'd just play a little bit on it.
Throbbing for that blessed warning light. Murmurs passed along the valleys like a banshee's lonely croon, and 1,000 blades were flashing at the rising of the moon. At the rising of the moon, at the rising of the moon, 1,000 blades were flashing at the rising of the moon. There beside that singing river, a dark mass of men were seen. Far above the shining weapons hung our unbeloved green. Death to every foe and traitor, power straight to marching soon. It's our army fight for freedom, 'tis the rising of the moon. 'Tis the rising of the moon, 'tis the rising of the moon. It's our army fight for freedom, 'tis the rising of the moon.
See?
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the flowers are dying. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when Oh, when the valley's hushed and white with snow, I'll be there in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. And when he comes and all the flowers are dying, and if I'm dead, as dead I well may be, you'll come and see me there crying, lying, and kneel and say, and I'll be where I be. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, ah, when the valley's hushed and white with snow, I'll be there in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, oh, Danny boy, I love you so. We're gonna keep the same bunch and add some more to it.
This is going to be the Conley Descendants Men's Group, and I'm going to let Bill take over introducing who else is joining.
Are they coming?
Oh, y'all done?
Everybody got something resembling a microphone?
What are we doing for?
Bound to the promised land, D. Are we ready, children?
Well,
Oh. Way down toward the end, anyway. On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wishful eye toward Canaan's fair and happy land where my possessions lie. I am bound for the promised land, promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land. O'er all those wide extended plains in one eternal day, there God the Son forever reign and scatters night away. I am bound for the promised land, promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land. When shall I reach that happy place and be forever blessed? When shall I see my Father's face and in His bosom rest? I am bound for the promised land, promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land. gonna have to find this one.
Music search going on.
What number is it?
Number 27, what 25.
There it is. I took it out. Key of 8. I'm satisfied with just a cottage below, a little silver and a little gold. But in that city where the ransom will shine, I wanna go on that silver line. I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never grow old. And someday yonder we will never more wander, but walk the streets that are pure as gold. Though often tempted, tormented and tested, and like a prophet, my pillow a stone. And though I find here no permanent dwelling, I know he'll give me a mansion my own. I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never grow old. And someday yonder we will never more wander, but walk the streets that are pure as gold. Don't think me poor or deserted or lonely. I'm not discouraged, I'm heaven bound. I'm just a pilgrim in search of a city. I want a mansion, a harp and a crown. I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never grow old. And someday yonder we will never more wander, but walk the streets that are pure as gold. I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never grow old. And someday yonder we will never more wander, but walk the streets that are pure as gold. You got one more. Let's see, you have time. Wait. Number 6.
I'm kind of homesick for a country to which I've never been before. No sad goodbyes will there be spoken, for time won't matter anymore. Beulah land, I am longing for you, and someday on the where my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land. I'm looking now across the river where my faith will end in sight. There's just a few more days to labor, and I will take my heavenly flight. Beulah land, I am longing for you. And someday on thee I'll stand, where my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land. I see the lights, I hear the singing, a brand new song of joy divine. My soul rejoices just in knowing that soon these pleasures will be mine. Beulah land, I am longing for you. And someday on thee I'll stand, where my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land. Beulah land, I am longing for you. And someday on thee I'll stand, where my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land.
Jerry Shepherd now going to sing Old Rugged Cross for us. By the way, someone look at their keys. Everybody look right now? Everybody check your purses while we get some pictures. I've got them up here.
Push the alarm button on it.
That'll find it. On a hill And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true. Its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Hallelujah.
Now for our last musical offering, Kyle and Carly Boyd are going to play chopsticks. about how we have no musical talent at all on our little branch of the family, me and Kenny only, and I now know why. God gave it to everybody else in the family but us. But let's give one big round of applause for all of our musical talent. As I was back in the 1970s and early 80s impressed with my family, I'm yet impressed with us again. We're a good group, I have to say, if I do say so myself. Now on the program is a time for, it says comments or questions. I think this is usually when folks would make comments about future Conley reunions and everything else. One of the comments I want to make right now is to recognize what may not be necessarily the youngest member here today, but one of the youngest. We have, I believe, Kevin, your son's name is Cullen. Cullen, what's his whole name? Kevin Cullen Conley. He's a sweetie. As I was standing here, I also had somebody, the lady right here was telling me that she was proud to have named her now 24-year-old daughter, Conley Elizabeth Basham, who would be the great-granddaughter of Sybil Conley McClung, who came from the Martin William Conley family. So everybody's got a little bit of Conley. I named one of my 4 sons has Conley written in his name, and we just can't get away from it. It's in our blood. Has anybody got any particular comments or questions? Yes? Anybody else? Is there a... Well, we got the majority. We don't travel far from home. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Lisa, I'd just like to say, if anybody wants to chair this thing next year, they're more than welcome to.
Well, that was just what I was going to ask, if there's a desire to have this again next year. Can we have a show of hands, folks who'd like to do this again next year? All right. Well, we're going to have some help because I think we wore our reunion committee out a little bit. So if there's anybody who'd like to help participate and organize it, they did the heavy lifting, kind of getting things started. And we've got a few more names and addresses now as a way of circulating the information. Yes, ma'am.
Could we do it every other year? Yeah. To keep it from working so hard on everybody?
Every other year? That's a good... Yes, ma'am.
Lisa, Stacy, and Wayne and I, we had talked about it, and we had talked about it with you and with several relatives before, and we thought that would be a better idea.
Okay. That makes that...
Every other year, since 27 years is a little bit long, but to have another one next year, let's gather the data we have this year and kind of assimilate it and give us time to catch our breath, and then maybe the next year we could.
That sounds like, I see a lot of heads nodding, so it looks like that might be the majority opinion here, so that's great.
I think probably we wouldn't mind sharing it again.
If you had 2 years, had a year to catch up, okay, that makes sense.
I don't speak for Stacy, but I think.
I think probably from what she and I talked, I think that'd be fine with her too. I saw a hand over here.
We do it in the fall.
In the fall. Miss Kennedy, always a smart lady. Yes, sir.
I consider every year because you're beginning to count on some of us here.
Well, we will gather up the information, the addresses and maybe email addresses and everything else, and we can kind of get a feel for what, get in touch with folks that way. And maybe we can, I crossed my mind, somebody said something about a Conley website, perhaps, or something along that line where we can maybe keep up with information that way. Any other comments or questions? Lita, have I forgotten anything? Besides the silent auction, I'm headed there next.
You might mention that if anyone would like to have a copy of the movie, Stacy said she first
For those of you who weren't in here before the program, and some of you did kind of come in late, Stacy put together a wonderful slideshow, PowerPoint presentation, or I think it's just on a DVD, that played, that shows pictures of all the different groups. It really is a neat deal. I immediately made her promise to get me one. So if any of y'all are interested in that, we'll put your name on that list too.
What list, where?
Come up here, we'll make a list. We'll have all kinds of lists. Now, as far as the silent, yes ma'am?
Lisa, I'm sorry. to
No,
interrupt.
that's okay.
As far as the DVD goes, I have a limited amount. I have my laptop. If you want, I can order some today. And I have a limited amount. I probably have maybe 10.
Okay.
I can order today for maybe the out-of-towners.
Okay, that'd be great. Or I'd be glad to make sure we get it mailed off to whoever if we don't have time to do it today. Now, those of you who participated or saw the silent auction things, a large part of those were donated by Lita Lesh. And the reason for having the silent auction is this stuff costs a little bit of money. Everything from making the programs to just simply gathering things after the postage and things like that. It's been 27 years. And so the monies that come from here will be used to defray those expenses. And anything that's left over will be put into a fund for future reunion costs. And I don't know how much it costs to do this, but if nothing else, we'll put some flowers on, if there's anything left towards Cullen and Dicey Cullen and Dicey's graves and those sorts of things. But right now I'm going to announce who won the silent auction things. My husband was volunteered to come up here, and if you want, if you'll come up here and pick out your item and give him a check or your money, or make arrangements to have this paid, this is where things are going on here. The number one item was 4 books by Alice Taylor, and the winner was Kathy Lafitte. The second item was 2 musical CDs, The Dance Music of Ireland, and the winner was Butch Conley. The crystal napkin holder was David Conley. The next item was the 2 books, The Irish Blessings and Irish Laws, was Claude Wiggins. The next were note cards, Regina Conley. Next, there were 2 books, The Great Irish Stories of Childhood and Irish Fairy Tales, Sharon Talbot. No, Sharon, can't read the last name, but you know who you are. The Irish Cathedral books, Kathy Lafitte bought. The hardbound book, The Far from the Shamrock Shore, Bill Conley. The 6x9, the 8x10 photo frame, original photo of Ireland, Jean Lesh. You know what? I see my name on a lot of these, but y'all all outbid me. Hurt my feelings. The 5x7 photo frame, mirrored border, Tina Conley. The Irish Good Luck package was Susie Conley. The Irish gift set for a baby girl was Sharon Talbot. The Tea Time package was Patty Lesh. The music CD, The Conleys, A Pistol in His Pocket, Exene Conley Horton. The CD, Bill Conley's Songs of the Irish, Claude Wiggins. The music CD, The Rising of Fiona, The Conleys, was Crystal Conley. The Jealous Wall by the Conley CD was Peggy Pickney. Pickney. I don't have my glasses on. I messed up there doing this. I didn't know I was going to be reading like this. The Conley's Gospel Irish Band CD, Adrian Wallace. The Irish Blessing Picture and Frame, Louise Conley. I'm going to save the hand tool dyed and matted thing for last, since there was a fight over that. The Irish Meal Blessing and the Conley family frame was Crystal Conley. And the candy dish from Austria was David Martin. Now, I don't know if y'all saw the beautiful hand-tooled, dyed and matted frame Conley family crest out there. Regina, you made that?
My fiance.
Well, Regina, I don't know if you know, but after a fight here, it went to Crystal Conley for $500. Well, now we'll finish off the program as we always did, or we'll add with the little block church on the hill, which I believe is the Spring Hill Baptist Church song, followed by Dixie.
Dixie, as we call it today, as we remember and cherish our heritage. Most of all, may we all cherish our God and Creator through our love for Jesus Christ and in service to Him. Let us sing. Started. Somebody know how to do Dixie? We got no
Bill?
Bill, take us off.
We don't have a piano, you're going to have to just go.
Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born, early on the frosty morn. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die. Dixie, away, away, away down south in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie.
Amen.
Now, Bill Wilson's going to come and give the benediction. Larry Shaw had to sneak out.
Hasn't it been good to be here?
Amen.
It sure has, to be here with family. Would you join me in prayer? Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you've given to us. We just thank you for this special time of fellowship with family from so long ago. We thank you for all the things that were done for preparation for this. And thank you for the food that was prepared today and all the hands that went into that. We pray that your blessings upon those here and for their safety as they go on to their places of abode. Forgive us for all the things we do wrong. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you all for coming, especially those of you who traveled. Y'all be safe going home. We've got the silent auction stuff here, and if you'd like to come sign up.